Hey all, welcome back to my channel on this fine afternoon. So today, oh my god, you guys, we're reading the final chapter, chapter 8, Crossroads in Time, and the epilogue. It's been a long road, am I right? Not as long as others, because clearly I have taken my time. Full disclaimer here, you might hear a fan in the background. It is summer in Kentucky, and I refuse to be uncomfy. Anyway, guys, I'm so excited. We're on the last chapter. You guys are not helping me, by the way. In my poll, I had asked what book series. We may have to flip a coin on this one and try to go from there. I was thinking of going straight up Dane, but then I was like, well, you know, we might put Tortle to the side a little bit for a little while and go to Emmeline because the two ones that got picked were Dane's books and the Circle of Magic books, and in their world the main city is the main country is Emmeline, I believe. But anyway, I think we're gonna end up flipping a coin, so more on that to come. Anyway, the very last chapter of this book. Now this is quite long, so kind of bear with me, but very excited. Chapter 8, Crossroad in Time. The night before the coronation, Alanna stayed with Jonathan as he kept vigil in the chapel of the ordeal. While he meditated on the obligations of kingship, she worried. None of those who'd made his protection their goal were satisfied that the single men pouring into the city in recent weeks had come to enjoy themselves. They'd had no choice, Rawle, Gary, the Lord Provost, but to let the coronation take place, so they had every fighting man in service to the palace on duty and alert. Alanna attended their talks with John that afternoon, but had nothing to add. The back of her neck prickled constantly, reflecting her uneasiness, but that wasn't solid evidence of trouble. When she and Jonathan reached the chapel, she was pleased to see Rawle had posted a double guard. The knight inched by quietly. The only movement she noticed occurred when she or Jonathan changed position. The iron door of the chamber shimmered in the candlelight, a vivid reminder of her ordeal of knighthood. Here, John would undergo the ordeal of kings. The only advantage she could see to his entering that room a second time was that the king's ordeal was said to be short. For herself, she knew that no inducement could get her to enter that place again. Suddenly, the light shifted. The Dominion jewel danced in the air in front of her, so real-looking she had to touch the pouch at her waist to make sure the jewel was in there. She stared, wondering if this was a glimpse of the future or something of the jewel's making. The false jewel shimmered and grew, coming closer until it overwhelmed her eyes. Inside it, she saw. In the center of the chamber of the ordeal, Roger lay on a block of stone. He got up, held out his arms. "Come, loved one," he whispered. She had been warned not to speak or scream. Her jaws knotted to keep from yelling her fury. She couldn't move. Closer he came. She bit the inside of her cheek to keep silent. Coppery blood flooded her mouth. She was in his arms, and they danced. His face lit with love and with rage. His sapphire eyes insane. "We'll dance until the end of everything, my darling. My pet," he crooned. "Promise me we'll dance forever." She shook her head, struggling wildly against his grip. She opened her mouth, then clamped it shut. She was forbidden to scream in the chamber of the ordeal. She was in the chapel once again, her hands tight over her mouth. Luckily, Jonathan was in some kind of trance, unable to notice her antics. Slowly, she lowered her hands, trembling. What did today have in store? When the first rays of sun slid through the high windows of the chapel, the priests came. Jonathan rose to go with them, still in a trance. Gently, they conveyed him to the chamber and ushered him inside. Alanna tugged at her earbobs, trying to think of nothing at all. When the door swung open, 15 minutes later, she was the first one there to catch John, as he had once caught her. He smiled at her tiredly, murmuring, "Not bad if you like ordeals." Alanna bit back a laugh. Gary came up to take Jonathan's other arm. They helped him to his room, where he could sleep for a few hours. With a sleepy wave, Alanna parted from Gary and went to the nearby chamber that had been prepared for her. The last thing she saw as she drifted off to sleep was her gold-washed mail glimmering at her from the rack in the corner. In his suite of rooms, Alex of Tyrgen sharpened his sword. He was dressed in black and wearing breeches. He did not plan to attend the coronation. Testing the edge of his blade, he smiled. Delia of Eldorn fussed with her hair at the mirror. Unlike Alex, she was in full court regalia, her emerald silk with its stiffened skirts rustling as she put last-minute touches on her appearance. "Aren't you the least bit nervous?" she asked, adjusting a hair ornament. "Why should I be?" was the cool reply. "He's thought of everything." "What if just saying succeeds?" Alex chuckled. "Delia, have you no faith in our champion? We have an appointment today, though she doesn't know it." He held up the sword, his eyes dreamy. "She won't let a madwoman like Josane prevent her from coming." Squire Henrim knocked and stepped into the room. "Lord Alexander, I let the men-at-arms into the back corridors near the Hall of Crowns. They're concealed in the storerooms. Captain Chelsea says the Elden men have taken their places inside the hall among the crowd." He bowed to Delia, who smiled. Alex stood, sheathing his sword. "You'll be with the men in the dungeon level. Before you go there, remind both captains they are not to act until the signal, which will come after the crown rests on Jonathan's head. After the crowning. Understand?" The squire hesitated. "But surely he'll be bound to the land. He'll use Turtle's magic against the Duke." "Idiot!" Delia snapped. "Do you think Duke Roger hasn't planned for that? Don't question your betters." Henrim bowed, shamefaced. Forgive me, Lady Delia." With a sniff, Delia turned back to her mirror. "Huh. Follow your orders exactly," said Alex. "If you fail, you will pay." "I won't fail," the squire promised hotly. "Take the hidden stair." "Dismissed." The youth bowed. "Good luck, my lord, and long live King Roger." "Fool." Alex whispered when the door closed. Of them all, he alone knew Roger's real plans. He alone knew that those like Delia who planned to steal Jonathan's throne so that they could have power were in for a disappointment. He picked up his dagger and tested the edge. Now, to work. From her position along the wall near the altar, Alanna watched with pride as the Mithrin priests and the priestesses of the goddess acted as one, blessed the crowned silver, and then Jonathan, who knelt before them. She was grateful that her duties didn't call for her participation in this part of the ceremony. After keeping vigil with John all night, she was sleepy. Somehow, repeated yawns did not seem right for such a memorable occasion. Instead, until it was time to present Jonathan formally with the jewel, all she had to do was stay put and look impassive. On her left, Gary and Rawl did the same. Rawl winked as she covered a yawn. Unlike the king's champion, the knight commander had spent the night in bed, disturbed only by his nerves. She had to admit he may have gotten as little sleep as she had. John's safety today was the responsibility of the king's own. She let her eyes drift over the crowd that had packed the vast hall. Morning was officially over. Nobles and commoners alike bloomed with color. She could see Miles and his companions, Eleni, Thayet, Bury, and Rispa, all wearing their finest. She picked out other familiar faces, Duke Baird and Gareth, Sirs Douglas, Joffrey, and Satchel. Many wept openly, moved by the beauty of the day and the moment. A halt at the chanting brought the knight's eyes back to the altar. Just as the crown had lowered onto Jonathan's head, immediately it sparked and glowed, and the magic of the land reached down to envelop the new king. People gasped with awe as Jonathan flared with brilliance. They knew the joining of Tortle and the king was complete. Smiling, Alanna touched the ember at her throat. Jonathan was brilliant with the crown's silver glow, his own magic showing through its threads of sparkling blue. She looked down and felt sick. The floor of the chamber was awash with blood-colored fire. "Jonathan!" she yelled as the earth moaned and shook. Sudden pain, combined with the vibration beneath her, knocked Alanna to her knees. For a moment, she could only clutch her belly and scream with agony. It receded, then flared again. In the hall, chaos reigned. From the vaulted ceiling, mortar dust and chips of stone fell, an ominous hint of the destruction that could occur. People screamed in fear as the ground rolled underfoot like a ship at sea. Alanna was deaf and blind to it all. The pain was grinding. She felt as if every nerve in her body was being pulled out through her skin. "Tom," she realized, struggling to get up. "Something's happening to Tom, and I can feel it. I have to go to him." "God the King!" she yelled to Rawl, lurching to her feet. Faithful was at her side as she hurled herself out of a nearby door, running as quickly as gold mail would allow for her brother's quarters. Pain ripped into her again. She bit her lip to fight it and stumbled on, determined to reach her twin. Strong arms caught Alanna from behind, helping her along. She looked up into George's eyes and fought to smile. He was dressed as one of the king's own. "What is it, darling?" he asked. They never hesitated in the long strides that took him up the stairs to the second floor. "Tom," she whispered. "He's being attacked. The earthquake is magic. It's the color of Tom's gift, all blood red." "Blood? But his is purple, like corrupted," she gasped as she flew down the hall that led to Tom's rooms. "Turn blood-colored." "What color would purple and orange make?" George asked as they came to a halt. "Roger's gift and the Trebon gift." Alanna felt even sicker. Inside Tom's parlor, the air was heavy, almost liquid. The light was greenish-yellow. Alanna froze, wary. "What is it, lass?" George whispered. He was tense, feeling the menace as she did. She fumbled at her waist, taking the pouch off her belt. "The jewel!" She pressed it into his hands. "You have to take it to John. What was I thinking of? To carry it away from him. George, please." The pouch was lost in the thief's large hands. "Alanna, I can't believe in you. You have to," she cried. "I can't use it. John can, and I have the feeling he'll need it." George hesitated. A second shock made the ground shiver under their feet. It was over as quick as it began. Grimly, George stuffed the pouch into the front of his tunic. "I'll get it to him. Never fear." He kissed Alanna swiftly and hard, then ran for the Hall of Crowns. Miles saw Alanna go, protecting his head as tiles broke free from the arches overhead, shattering in the main aisle. Jonathan flared with white and blue lights. He was invisible in the fires of his gift and the crown. The doors leading out of the hall were jammed with fleeing men and women, as were the great city doors. Eleni stood, her face deathly pale. "Not the land," she whispered. "Not the earth itself." A flutter of movement in the rear of the Hall of Crowns caught Bury's always watchful eye. A man stripped away his cloak to reveal a nobleman's purple and black livery and a short crossbow. He brought the weapon up fast, aiming for Jonathan. Bury yanked a throwing star from her belt and flung it, killing the bowman. "There's an attack!" she yelled to Miles. "Warn the king!" Miles's seat was on the great aisle. He was halfway to the altar in a second, moving fast for a plump man. At his warning shout, both Gareth and the provost joined Rawle to form a protective circle from the king. The king's own broke into squads, one forming an outer circle around the nobles, the others moving into the crowd to attack the enemy. Both circles parted to let Miles through to Jonathan's side. "Miles!" John gasped through the magics that obscured him. "What's going on?" "Men in Eldern and Terrigan colors are attacking anyone who can fight," Miles said grimly, "and they're trying to kill you. Where are the earthquakes coming from?" Jonathan shook his head. I don't know. As soon as I get a chance, I'll try to find out. Where's Alanna?" "Gone," the older man said. "Something called her away in a hurry. George followed her, and Coram followed George." She has the jewel," the king whispered. "And where is Master Seacham?" Miles was wondering the same thing. In Tom's chambers, Alanna was suddenly weak, as if something tugged at her gift, drawing it away from her. Steeling herself, she closed her mind to whatever was trying to drain her. Forcing herself to move, she searched for her twin. He was in the bedroom. Bad as the air in the parlor felt, this was worse. A weight pressed on her lungs. She checked Tom's vital signs. His pulse was shallow and fast. He was cool, alarmingly so after weeks of being too hot. When she grabbed the emberstone, Alanna saw only a trace of his gift streaming away from him, much as her own had tried to do. She reached past the barrier she'd set on her magic, determined to use it to save him, no matter what the consequences. Tom's eyes flew open. He gripped her hands with the last of his strength. "Don't! I'm bound to him. He'll drain you through me." "Roger," she whispered. Tom nodded. She spotted her cat. "Faithful, go no time," Tom snapped. "Listen." He didn't relax his bruising grip. His gift, attached to sorcerer's resurrecting him. She put her ear close to his lips to hear. "It got stronger, as he did." Tom smiled. "Never as strong as mine." She wiped tears away, growling, "Who cares if your gift's bigger? He can only drain one at a time. You're bound to me. You've some of my gift, some of his too. He needs more to finish what he began. Don't let him get it. Don't use gift. Leeching spells," he gasped. "He'll take all. Leave nothing." Tom tried to laugh. The result sounded like a horse barking. "He didn't get all mine. You have part." Singing back, he pulled her with him. His voice was barely audible, his hands cold. "Love you. Always have. Always will. No," she rasped, but he couldn't hear it. "Never know how he did it." He was gone. Near the staircase leading to the ground floor, George found Coram. "I saw her go, and ye after her." Alanna's oldest friend gasped, catching his wind. "I figured he'd need help." George showed him the jewel. "She forgot she had this. I'm to carry it to John." "What of her?" "With Tom." Coram hesitated. "I'd best reach her, unless—" "I'll keep the jewel safe," George reassured him. "It's not that far to the hall." "It's far enough." Claw and 5 of his men materialized from the gallery behind George. "My friend said you'd come this way." He stretched out a hand and beckoned. "Give me the swag now before I get your blood all over it." "This isn't your fight. Clear out." He glanced at Coram. Coram hefted his broadsword, his face grim. "She'll never forgive me if I run out on you now," he told George. George tucked the jewel into his belt purse as he unsheathed his daggers. "Rispa or the Lady Knight?" He grinned. Claw's men fanned out, forming a half circle with George and Coram at its center with the stairs at their backs. "Both," replied Coram. He leapt forward to engage a ruffian, crying, "For the lioness!" Pandemonium ruled in the Hall of Crowns. Other men-at-arms tore off cloaks to reveal purple and black or green and white liveries. They were heavily armed with specific targets: the men of the king's own, any nobleman fighting back, Jonathan and his guards. Their opponents were high-born and wealthy men with flimsy dress swords, unarmed common-born men using anything that could serve as weapons, even some ladies and children. Many others tried to flee, adding to the confusion. Bury could see a knot of noblewomen, including the imperious Duchess of Naxon, imposing order in their vicinity. More men-at-arms poured in through the drapery hidden entry behind the altar, taking the men around John by surprise. Rawl yelled a command and ran forward with the guards in the center circle to engage the new attackers. Bury couldn't see Liam, Coram, or Alanna beside her. Rispa had palmed a large dagger and was advancing on an unsuspecting enemy archer. The Chimera girl was torn. Her first duty was to protect Thayet, but she was also a warrior, trained to act in situations like this. Thayet solved her problem. "Give me your sword! We have to do something!" Bury glanced at Alanna as she obeyed Thayet. The older woman moved into a pillar's shadow, unraveling the intricate embroidery on her sleeve. She broke off a long thread and smiled at Bury and Thayet. "Don't worry about me." Fixing her eyes on a group of archers near the altar, she began to tie knots in the thread, her lips moving silently. Bury wrestled a long-bladed pike from a rack of weapons on the walls. Lowering it to an attack position, she launched herself into a clump of men in Eldorn colors. The first one she engaged backed away from her charge. He stumbled. Bury lunged for the kill and lurched as the ground leapt and rolled in a third quake. 3 men in Tirigan colors raced up the stairs to aid Claw as George and Coram dispatched 2 enemies. Claw himself stayed back, coward, screeching orders and awaiting his chance. George lost a dagger in a throw, killing a Tirigan guard. Coram killed a rogue and wounded another. The men around them shifted, seeking better positions, and George took the offered chance. He lunged at Claw. The one-eyed man swore and lashed out with his knives, panicking at dealing with George himself. The thief rearmed his left hand with an extra blade, making Claw sweat. He didn't have the eye or the nerve to fight two-handed. Frantic, he slashed out and cut wide-armed, leaving holes in his guard that George deliberately ignored. The bigger man toyed with Claw, spinning him around, raking his flailing arms, taunting. One of Claw's lucky cuts caught George on the cheekbone, another on his chest. A Tirigan guard faltered. Coram slew him with a murderous slash and fell back, gasping for breath. For the moment, he was safe. The 2 remaining enemies, one Tirigan, one rogue, focused their attention on the rogue and his rival. When he saw no one else would interfere, George settled into a fighter's crouch. Beckoning to Claw, he said grimly, "It's us now. The succession must be settled. Fight, Roland, or Claw, if you've the belly." His single eye rolled wildly. Claw looked for a way to escape. There was none. He'd always known he couldn't beat the rogue on his terms. He tried to for several minutes, throwing his cunning into the battle. He kicked and hit, trying to be unpredictable, but George had been weaned on such tricks. For a moment they locked knives. pressed together body to body. Then claw dropped, George's blade hilt deep in his chest. Yes. Alanna didn't know how long she sat, holding Tom's cold hand. She was certain somehow this was all her fault. How was she supposed to live without her other half? Faithful got her attention. Finally, by latching onto her leg with claws and teeth, kicking ferociously until the pain roused her. "What are you doing?" she screeched. "Wake up, King's champion," was the angry reply. "You've no time for this. He's going to rip the earth open." Alanna knew she couldn't escape her responsibilities, although they'd never meant less to her. Gently, the grieving knight kissed her twin. She walked out of the bedroom, drying her face on her handkerchief as fresh tears ran. "Where's Seacham?" As if in answer, the old man staggered in, clutching a bloody right arm. Alanna grabbed a towel and swiftly bandaged the priest before he lost more blood. Fighting brief nausea, Seacham's right hand was gone. Without the rough tourniquet he wore already, he would be dead. "Don't use your gift," he warned as she worked. "Brandy!" Alanna handed him a bottle and watched as he gulped its contents. Rage was replacing her grief. She wanted to act. Nursing the old man was not the action she craved. Seacham put the bottle down. "I am a fool." His voice was stronger. "Never challenged in all these years. Thinking I could not have been bested. It's not enough I pay for my folly. You will too." Gripping the table with his left hand, he met Alanna's cold eyes. "Open your mind." She stepped back. "Why?" "There's no time to explain. You waste what time we have. If you don't know all, you risk disaster. Do you doubt me?" he whispered. "I made a mistake. Because I didn't make two, we are alive. You cannot make even one." She closed her eyes and let him in. 100 bits of knowledge struck her at once. Gates of Idrum. A gate for magic to drain it into the gate's master. My hand. He uses it to steal my gift. Jonathan, gift, Bazir, desert magic, turtle, land, crown, jewel. He alone can bind the earth. Follow the secret way. Image of deserted stair and the ruined temple in the catacombs. Not all Roger's power stored in Tom, some with Alanna. Stay out of gate trap. Image of white whirls and loops. Leeching spell. Give King all he needs. Send King Alanna Tom Rogers power to hold the land. He didn't ask. She never would have let him do it if he had. He sent Alanna's gift to Jonathan, using it as a bridge to link minds with the new king. For an awful moment, Alanna was three. Herself, Seacham, Jonathan. The blood-colored fire of Roger's gift beat down on the priest's defenses, seeking a way to enter and take the magic forming around John. Suddenly, the last of Alanna's magic was gone, the link broken. Seacham broke the link so fast Alanna was thrown into a faint as the fourth earth shock began. The nobles encircling Jonathan fought off another large group of attackers that had come through the door behind the altar. Miles was taking a second breather when he saw John lift his hands. Purple fire swirled around the king's arms, clinging like a skin. The light of the crown that bathed him darkened, drinking in the amethyst gift. A third fire flowed over John's head and back like a hooded cloak. Miles shuddered at its brownish-red color, the color of dried blood. He'd singled out his next opponent when the ground yawned and bucked under their feet, the fourth quake. The shock lasted a full minute, ending as abruptly as it began. Huge chunks of plaster and stone broke free of the arches and roof, crushing several people on the floor. The enemy's soldiers were frightened but disciplined enough to hold their places. Their ferocity increased the quicker they slew the king, the quicker they could escape this death trap. Sweating, George turned away from Claw's body. 5 men wearing Eldorn green and white had come up the stairs while Coram and the others watched his fight. Now Coram retreated to the wall of the gallery. George went to his side, grabbing a sword from a dead man as he did. 5 more soldiers in Tirigan purple and black ran up along the gallery to block any chance of escape. "Someone must have smuggled him into the palace," Coram gasped, cutting down a Tirigan fighter, "and brought him into the city wearing civilian clothes." George hurled a dagger to kill a man at the rear, keeping 2 more at bay with his sword. At least 12 others closed them in, and no help was in sight. "I promised my lass I'd get her jewel to John," he told himself grimly. "Thief that I may be, but I've never broken my sworn word." Coram swore and faltered. "Lad?" "A scratch," the man-at-arms gasped, pressing his free hand to his side. For a moment they thought the earth was shaking, but it was only a sound, a feral roar, echoing down the gallery. Coram grinned. "Finally!" he gasped before attacking his present assailant with renewed energy. Liam Ironarm threw himself into the battle with a ferocity that made even George speechless. There was no following the dragon's movements as he lashed out with fists and feet, striking down any man who opposed him. There was no question of any of the men attacking George and Coram landing a blow on the Shang fighter. 6 enemies broke and ran. Liam hurled himself at the last of them. His foot catching the running man just above his shoulders, he went down. Ironarm returned to George and Coram as the thief tied a rough bandage over the wound in Coram's side. The man-at-arms grinned at Liam, dark eyes glittering in his sweat-soaked face. "You're late, dragon." Liam smiled grimly. "I was delayed. Where's Alanna?" "Back there," George said tightly. By now he wondered where she had gone. "I have to get to the Hall of Crowns." Reaching into his purse, he brought up the jewel. For a moment, Liam stared in the direction George had indicated, clearly wanting to find Alanna. Then he sighed. "The jewel's the important thing. Let's go." Coram didn't even speak. He had a feeling his night mistress was no longer in Tom's rooms, and that he couldn't follow her down the path she walked now. Together, the 3 men set out at a trot for the Hall of Crowns, George supporting Coram. Alanna came around slowly. Her skull pounded with the force of her rage when she remembered Seacham had stripped her of her gift, loading it all into Jonathan. She did not like that the Mithrin's high-handed way of ordering her life, and she planned to tell him so. Rolling onto her stomach, she pushed herself onto all 4s. She felt sick and empty, far worse than when Tom borrowed her gift to bring Roger back to life. Faithful's yowl and Seacham's scream alerted her to danger. The old man struggled with someone at the door. Alanna grabbed a chair, dragging herself to her feet. A double-handed axe chopped down, biting deep into Seacham's collarbone. He dropped. Josane stood in the doorway, spattered with his blood, trying to work her axe free. "Why didn't you blast me, old fool?" she panted. Alanna knew the answer, although she refused to tell the princess. If Seacham had taken the chance, he'd have been open to Roger's leeching spell. He'd broken the link to Alanna and John for the same reason. Roger would have taken his gift unless he concentrated on his own defense. Now Seacham was dead. He and his gift were forever out of Roger's grasp. Josane freed her blade and stepped over the old man's body, smiling. "He told me you'd be here," she explained. "He said he didn't think I could take you, but I am so welcome to try. You aren't doing well, are you?" She inched forward, ready to pounce. Maneuvering for room, Alanna tripped over a footstool. Josane darted forward, her axe high. They'd forgotten Faithful. Screeching, he flew into Josane's face, clinging as she howled and dropped the axe. "Stop, Roger!" the cat ordered as Josane gripped his small body. The princess hurled him down and stepped with all her might. With Faithful's agonized cry, strength poured into his mistress. She crouched and lunged, drawing lightning as she moved. With a single brutal slash, she cut Josane down. Her new strength pounded in her ears as she shoved the dying woman aside to pick up Faithful. "Time to go home," he cried, and was gone. Gently, she placed him on a table. Her fingers shook as she unbuckled her sword belt, letting it and the sheath drop. With lightning gripped in her hand, she walked out of the door, heading for her last conversation with Duke Roger of Conte. Coram, George, and Liam arrived in the Hall of Crowns as the fifth quake began. This time, the fighting halted as everyone waited to see if the roof would come down. The stone floor of the chamber rolled and shuddered like the deck of a seafaring ship, throwing more than one person to the ground. The crowds were gone, most escaping through the city doors. Only the combatants remained, each involved in his or her own separate battles for survival. Duke Gareth, Gary, and Miles were all that was left of the circle guarding Jonathan. Rahl and several of the king's own fought desperately to stem the flow of Tyrrgan and Eldorn men coming from the chambers behind the hall. The provost and more royal men-at-arms contained a rush of enemies from the main aisle. Liam quickly appraised the situation and grabbed a pike, going to Rahl's aid where the danger of the breakthrough was worst. Coram joined the men around John, steadying himself for a long morning. Bury, streaked with dirt and sweat, saluted him with a grin before she and Thayet attacked a cluster of archers. He saw Rispa guarding Alanna, just as he saw several groups of enemies struggling against the invisible ropes George's mother had bound them with. George thrust the jewel onto Jonathan's hands and turned to become part of John's protective circle. The king closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, gripping the jewel tightly. He called all of his magics, his own gift, the Bazir desert sorcery, the power of the kings and the land of Tortle that was bound into the crown, the magic of the Dominion jewel, and he threw them over the length and breadth of Tortle, feeling the earth's pain as if his own body were being shattered. Like an ancient tree sending out its myriad roots, he bound each crack and fault with sorcery, gripped the whole to him, and held. The crown, dedicated to the realm for centuries, blazed. The jewel shone even brighter than the crown, and the battles raged in the corridors of the palace. Jonathan was part of it all, his vision reaching everywhere. Being the voice of the tribes had prepared him for such a confusing moment, when someone else might have been driven mad by the consciousness of each person, animal, tree, and stone in the realm. Jonathan was able to encompass it, to set the greater part of it aside with a bit of his awareness to guard it. His chief vision focused on a small, copper and gold figure traveling through the bowels of the castle. The ground floor, the level below Tom's quarters, consisted of public rooms, the Hall of Crowns, salons, libraries, ballrooms, and banquet room. Alanna bypassed it on one of the 100 staircases without hesitation, her mind and will fixed on the catacombs. Next was the level where everyday business took place. Healers, tailors, laundrywomen, scribes, armorers, quartermasters, and mapmakers All worked here. Today this level was empty. Alanna's feet made the only sound. Next were stores, endless rooms filled with every imaginable supply. This level, too, was silent. The dungeons and guard rooms were the third level below ground. She heard fighting, but the way to Roger that Seacham had shown her was a safe distance away from it. Here, the shock that Jonathan had contained found her. She waited after its halt, expecting another. It never came, but the ground shivered continuously, shifting silently from time to time. Pieces of the ceiling hailed down. The staircase began to exhibit tiny cracks, and to lose small pieces. John stopped the big quakes, the mother shakers, she thought. But how long can the palace, or any building, take this constant stress? Down Alanna went, her eyes blazing in her tight face. She halted once to wipe sweaty palms on her shirt. Then she gripped lightning afresh and moved on. The length of the stairs increased as she descended. They were broken up by landings with a guard room off each landing. Since the stair she followed was little used, the guard rooms were shut. Now, approaching the catacombs on the fourth level, she found one blazing with light. She halted a few steps above it, considering her options. Perhaps the occupant knew she wanted no more delays. Alex of Tyrgen, silver mail glittering, stepped out onto the landing. He unsheathed his sword, rested on one black gauntleted hand. "Just you?" "I'd have thought you'd bring others. I'm in a hurry." Her eyes sparkled dangerously. "Get out of my way before he tears the palace down around our ears." Shapes moved on the stairs below the landing. 2 big men-at-arms in Tyrgen purple and black. "Your lordship," one rumbled nervously. "She's panicking," Alex snapped, his eyes not leaving Alanna. "Hold your positions." He indicated the lit room with his blade. "Step inside, Lady Knight. There's more space." She hesitated, looking from Alex to his men. She wanted to scream with rage, or blast them with her gift. She walked inside. The furniture had been shoved into a second chamber. Branches of candles lit the main room. "Aren't you going to have your friends watch?" "The only witness I need is right here." He touched his temple with a gloved finger. "You can stretch first, if you like. And lose more time?" "No." Alex tried for a few lazy passes with his own sword, taunting her. "I've waited for this chance." Exasperated, she snapped. "You're crazy. To want to play best squire at a moment like this." Alex moved into place. Both swung their weapons up to guard. "Think what you like." He attacked savagely, his face calm, a violent contrast to his rapidly spinning and slashing blade. Alanna blocked repeatedly, hiding her dismay. After the draining of her gift, she was a touch slower than she needed to be against an opponent with whom a touch of slowness made all the difference. She fought with her brain, carefully maintaining her distance, watching for Alex to make an error out of his need. She circled, lightning flowing to stop Alex's blade. Each time he thrust or cut inward, high, low, either side, she caught his eyes shifting away from her shoulders. Like a novice, he was plainly searching for an opening. She smiled grimly. "No one ever wins fights defensively," Alex snarled. "I'm not the one obsessed with winning." She gasped, her voice cracking. Alex faltered. Alanna whipped her blade into a reverse crescent. He blocked jarringly, almost too late. She clenched her teeth and swung immediately into a crescent. As Alex's sword rose to stop lightning, Alanna whipped down into a vertical butterfly too fast to watch. scoring lightly across Alex's middle to bite into his shoulder. The grate of sword on mail made her wince, and she swore for letting her preoccupation with Roger make her forget her opponent's armor. She lunged back to get away from his countercut. They were back to circling as the fanatic gleam deepened in Alex's eyes. Alanna scrubbed her free hand dry, then gripped Lightning's jewel-studded hilt with both hands. Now it was her turn to attack in a series of harsh, downward chopping blows meant to cleave Alex from crown to soul. He blocked, retreating, until he lunged forward to lock swords body to body. As she strained under his downward pressure, Alex snarled and kicked her in the stomach. Alanna yelled and went down, rolling to keep out of his way as he sliced at her. The gold mail across her shoulders grated, and she clenched her teeth against the bruising pain of the impact. Ignoring it, she flipped to an upright stance. Alex lunged in, and she countered blindly, Lightning extracting another screech of metal from his armor. He retreated. She lunged. They exchanged a flurry of blows and blocks, neither gaining an advantage. From the corner of her eye, she saw his men-at-arms had disobeyed his order to keep their positions to watch. A breath too slow, she saw the complex pass he'd begun. Lightning flew out of her grip, into a corner behind Alex. He leveled his sword, pointing at her throat, smiling tightly. "Say farewell, lioness." She edged back. "An honorable opponent would let me get my sword and continue." He shook his head. "I learned what I need to know. You were good, I admit that, but not I knew I was." She moved in a burst of speed, the little she kept back. She leaned away from his sword, her left foot curling up, then thrust out, slamming into his belly. Alex crashed into the wall. He got up and threw himself at her with a yell of fury. Liam had taught her only a few kicks and blows, making her practice incessantly. She could not beat a Shang warrior of many years, but her own speed and endless repetitions caused what she knew to carry the weight of a fully trained Shang. As Alex charged, she swung out of the way and kicked again, throwing him across the same spot on the wall. He lunged once more, cross-cutting with a speed she could not dodge. Slashing across her cheek and her bare right hand, in the split-second opening in the path of his sword, she rammed forward, crushing his windpipe with one fist as she struck his nose with the other, forcing bone splinters deep into his brain. They were pressed together so tightly she felt the life flee his body. She backed away hastily, letting Alex drop. "Is this what it's meant to be, the best, Alex?" He would never answer. She seized his blade and spun, determined to finish the guards, but they had fled. Alanna retrieved Lightning and set off down again. She hadn't gone far when her body reacted to the killing. She vomited over the stair rail, for long moments heaving dryly. She shook with exhaustion. Her treacherous knees threatened to give at every step. She was scared that the stairs would give way under the constant earth tremors. In spite of everything, she forged on, light-headed, her jaw set. The remaining distance only seemed endless. She reached the bottom at the rear of the catacombs. Had she chosen to go the proper way, she would have entered several hundred yards from her present spot. At the foot of the gently sloping ramps leading from the palace temples to the tombs, Rold and Leanne's burial place, newly plastered and decorated, was somewhere near the entrance. Alanna had emerged by tombs 300 and 400 years old. Someone had thoughtfully lit the torches. She followed the vision Seacham gave her, ignoring her growing terror. The tombs ended, opening onto a great stone floor. In its center, a large circular design. apparently of white sand, was drawn, its many curls and loops and swirls dizzying to see. On its edge, near her, was a splash of still wet blood. Sea chams, I bet, Alanna thought as she gulped back a surge of bile. This was the variant on the Gate of Idrim normally used to summon elementals. A spell to drain off the gift from anyone unfortunate enough to step into it. This was also the spot where Seacham lost his hand. Behind the gate was an abandoned structure. Legend said it was a temple. Roger lounged there against a fallen pillar, arms crossed over his chest. The air around him was filled with bloody fire that glittered evilly on his black silk robe. He smiled. I knew you wouldn't disappoint me. You took longer than I anticipated. Alanna prodded one curl of the gate with her sword to find the sand of the design had melted into the rock. White heat flashed up Lightning's edge. She yelped, pulling the blade away. He was scrutinizing her. Suddenly, she knew why. The knight spread her hands with her old, reckless grin. Didn't you know, Roger? I'm giftless. There's nothing for your gate to take from me. His eyes narrowed. How did that... Seacham. Now I understand. That's why your earthquake spell hasn't succeeded, she taunted. John's stopping you. He's got the jewel, the crown, my gift, even magic I bore for Tom, which means he's stopping you with some of your own gift. He shrugged. So that's why I didn't have enough to bring this comedy to an early finish? It doesn't matter. It does matter, she snapped. There are no more chances for you, Roger. You've bought an ugly old death on Trader's Hill. When it's over, I personally will scatter your ashes on the wind. You think I left any of this to chance, dear one? I had a plan a long time ago. You see, I wasn't quite dead when they buried me. She opened her mouth to deny it, but he shook his head. If we had time, I would explain a powerful working called Sorcerer's Sleep. For your purposes, I was dead. For my own... His face was bleak, terrifying. Then he waved the mood away. I planned carefully because you, sweet lioness, too often escape me. You and my kingly cousin. He studied well, better than when I was his teacher. Where he got the power that smelled of desert, I suppose I shall never know. You saved yourself from my gate, but you're tired. Come within my reach. He smiled, picked up a blade lying beside him. It was blood-stained. I need only lop off a small part of you, as I did Seacham. That bit will give me a tie to your inner self, and thus a clear road to Jonathan and the sorcery he wields. Alanna paled and stumbled back a step. Roger put down the knife to walk to the rim of the gate. You've grown so prudent, it may be you won't allow me that easy a way. Tell me then, how long can Jonathan last? Forever! Alanna threw it at him like a challenge. Perhaps. He stepped onto the gate as the energy whipped through the design, tugged at his robe. Silver glittered against black. The gate's design was duplicated on his clothes. If Jonathan musters no other sorcery against me, and all those who might make a difference are accounted for, I need only to wait. He came forward until he stood at the gate's center. The earth has her own means of dealing with unbearable pressure. She sheds it, redistributes it, expends it in small tremors. When she can do nothing else, she convulses, and then continues to do so until the pressure is gone. Even the gods cannot stop such an earthquake. Jonathan holds the land, but the pressure of my spell remains. How long do you think until the inescapable convulsion begins? Alanna felt cold and alone. "You'll be just as dead," she croaked. He smiled, and it was frightening. "Indeed, I hope so." She gripped her sword, measuring her strength against it. "Why do you tell me any of this?" "Because, Lady Knight, you will share it with me." "Did you think I would end it without you?" He chuckled. "I'll tell you a secret. Years ago, when I was your age, just finding the limits of my power, I took up jewelry making. To each thing I made, I attached a bit of my gift, to mark it as mine. Necklaces, rings, sword hilts. I even forged swords, to create a masterpiece of a weapon. Why you had to corrupt my design is beyond me. It was warped. You would think so." He reached out, red fire eddying around his fingers. Soft voice, he said, "With silver and stone I made thee. With gift and blood I bound thee. With my name I call thee." Lightning jumped, straining toward Roger. If she had still carried his original sword instead of melding it with lightning for a whole blade, she never could have kept hold of it. As it was, enough of the crystal blade and its hilt remained to wrench her arms as Alanna gripped it. Her cold eyes met his. "It will come to me eventually," he said, "and you will follow." All of her muscles knotted. The scars on her palms broke and bled. She dug in her heels and held. "What can I do?" she thought, despairing. "Can't I make even one decision he hasn't anticipated? What does he think I'll do?" The cold part of herself that stood aloof from everything whispered, "He expects you to fight, so stop fighting." With a teeth-baring effort, Alanna levered the sword back and let go. The effect was like loosing a bolt from a crossbow. Releasing from her pull, the sword shrieked as it flew, making her clap her hands over tortured ears. Roger didn't break his calling spell. He didn't even seem to know what she'd done until lightning buried itself in his chest. Roger grabbed the hilt. Amazingly, he laughed. He laughed until his dying lungs ran out of air. The silver design on his robes dripped and ran on the floor. His eyes closed, and he fell. Flames sprouted from the gate into the stone, devouring the body of Roger of Conte. Bury found her there. With the help of the king's own, she brought a fainting Alanna to the surface on a stretcher. Revived by the warmer air at the ground level, Alanna got Bury to help her walk to the Hall of Crowns. She was sickened by the bodies and evidence everywhere. Clearly, the assault... Really? Hold on. Sorry for that delay for a second there. I have a kitten, and that kitten likes to drop things. So what you heard was my earbud case, and now he's chasing something across the... I'm so sorry, guys. This is very unprofessional. Luckily, I don't get paid for this. Where was it? Okay. Clearly, the assault had been heavier than anyone had expected. Men of the palace guard admitted them into the hall with deep bows, and Bury waited silently as Alanna took in the scene before her. Between quake and uprising, the hall was in ruins. The city doors hung from their hinges. The stone risers had buckled and collapsed in sections. Pieces of roof and arches had fallen, dragging banners and garlands down to litter the floor in a mockery of a holiday. Survivors hunted in the rubble, freeing the trapped and pulling out the dead. These were placed on the main aisle for burial. Only later would the bodies of Tyrrgan or Eldorn colors be separated to be burned on Traitor's Hill. The provost limped over, brushing heavy silver hair back from a sweat-streaked face. "Not as bad as it looks," he said in his terse way. "More of them dead than us. They weren't expecting such opposition." His ice-blue eyes caught Alanna's and held them. "You take care of your end of things?" She grinned wolfishly. He grinned back. Bury was interested to note more than a slight resemblance between them in the moment. "Indeed I did." The provost put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Good." He paused. He added, "Your friend, Cooper. He did well today." Favoring a wounded leg, she returned to help the searchers. Alanna, looking worn and old, bandaged her bruised and wounded son. Seeing Alanna, George winked and blew her a kiss. When his mother scolded him for moving, he silenced her with a hug. Thayette, seeing the direction of his look, waved tiredly. She sat with her head on a nobleman's shoulder, a shattered sword on her lap. Her new friend was as exhausted and battered as she. Rispa fussed over Coram nearby. She also kept a sharp eye on Delia, who was bound and gagged with strips of what looked like someone's petticoat. Noting Alanna's look, Rispa grinned. "My lady here thought she'd knife His Majesty while the fighting was thickest, and the menfolk all occupied," she explained. "She didn't know I'd figured out her game." Gary, sporting bandages of his own, kissed Alanna swiftly. "Father had a heart attack," he said quietly. He'll be all right, thanks to Duke Bed. They're at the infirmary now. Bed and Father and Miles. Miles fought 2 of them, single-handed." Gary smiled tiredly. "They were huge. I don't know what possessed him, but he killed one and George finished the other." "As a mercy to the old man," George explained as he joined them, "after Miles hurt him so." He cupped Alanna's face, his grave hazel eyes searching out her own. He nodded, liking what he saw, and kissed her gently. "I'd watch out for Miles. He's that fierce when he's angry. Didn't even want to go and get his wounds stitched. Lucky Duke Baird insisted. We can't have Miles terrorizing the prisoners." Softly he added, "He's fine, lass." "The ladies all saved us," Gary went on. He indicated Thayette, Alanna, Bury, and Rispa. "They kept the archers from killing His Majesty. We're proud of them. Of you." He glanced at Alanna and looked away again, his eyes troubled. John, the king, told us what you did in the catacombs. He saw it all, somehow." Alanna faced the altar. Jonathan sat at its base, leaning against the stone. His face was drawn. She was shocked to see white threads in his hair where none had been that morning. The jewel was in his lap. He stirred. Joffrey of Marin gave him a cup of water. The altar itself had been cleared to make room for the body of Liam Ironarm. Did I know? She asked herself. Did I suspect? There was no way to tell. She climbed the altar steps and looked at the dragon alone. 8 arrows were piled beside him. His knuckles and wounds were neatly bandaged. Her eyes burned, but she was cried out. Helplessly, she plucked at his sleeve, wishing she could bring him back. Crying would have helped. He and George saved my life. They saved us all. Jonathan dragged himself up to lean on the altar. You just got into Roger when Tyrrigan's soldiers attacked me in force. Miles was down by then. Duke Bed, Roll, Duke Gareth. They're all right. I guess Roll will have a limp to show for it. Coram and Gary were drawn away. I was helpless. He grimaced. You did more than enough. Her broken voice was barely audible. But I couldn't do anything else. George and Liam kept me from being interrupted. Alanna shuddered, knowing the land would have shaken itself to pieces if John's concentration had been broken. 2 archers got clear. Liam took the arrows meant for me. He didn't even falter until the last. Jonathan's eyes met hers. It isn't much consolation, I know, but they'll sing about the dragon's last fight for centuries. After a moment, he added, "I'm sorry." She tried to walk away. Her weakened knees faltered. George caught her instantly. "It was the death he wanted," the king said. "We'll honor him, always." Alanna nodded dumbly. John reached for her. There was a flash, and a tiny ball of reddish-purple fire leapt from his fingers to her own bloody ones. Gently, he took her hand and kissed it. "We did it, King's champion. Total is safe." Epilogue. Heralds went out to explain to the people what had happened on Coronation Day. There would be no weeks of celebration that year. Tortle needed time to mourn, repair, and rebuild. Instead, the new king planned a festival to mark the first year of his reign on the anniversary of Coronation Day. Afterward, he would travel through his kingdom, the first such royal journey since his grandfather's day. Those found guilty by the courts of law of taking part in the rebellion lost their lands and wealth. They and their families were sent into exile. For Delia, the only living ringleader, the courts decreed life imprisonment. The sentences for all should have been death. The laws on treason were strict. But Jonathan would not begin his rule with executions. He granted more pardons in the first week of his official reign than had King Rold in all of his. A week after the funerals, the king found his champion in the catacombs, seated on a bench and gazing at the blackened gate of Idrim. Lightning stood there, thrust into the center of the design. The blade was streaked with soot, the jewels of its hilt cracked and blackened. Jonathan gripped the sword, trying to free it without success. "It's all right," Alanna told him. "I don't want it. There are other swords, and I like lightning right where it is." John released the weapon and looked at his filthy hands. "Good. I'm just thinking, will you please get away from the gate? You make me nervous." The king shrugged and came to sit beside her. "What's on your mind?" She hesitated a moment before saying, "Would you mind if I went to the Bloody Hawk for a while? I just need time to think, and I'd like a rest." She smiled. "I've had a busy year." "Take all the time you want," John assured her. "I know where to find you if there's need." Alanna to George Cooper, Baron of Pirate Swoop, written in late July. So, John has put me to work in finding the last of the Coronation rebels. I'm not surprised. It is very quiet here. Tell Miles I have enough sleep at last. I miss you. She entered into the daily routine of the tribe. Hunting lions with the young men and hearing the legends of the Bazir from the shamans. She took her turn at sentry duty, enjoying the quiet and the clearness of the stars. Shortly after her arrival, Alanna saw a new constellation at the foot of the cluster called the Goddess. She never found out who named it, but everywhere she traveled in later years, she always heard it called the Cat. Young people came from all over to meet the woman who rides like a man. Most were youths, but an occasional girl visited as well. Many of the boys were headed north to join the king's own. The girls planned to try their own fortunes, most of them as fighters. In the second week of October, Thayet and Burry came to the Bloody Hawk, escorted by a squad of the king's own. Alanna was glad to see them. Now that the edge had worn off from her grief for Tom, Liam, and Faithful, it wasn't long before Alanna began to wonder if Thayet had come to talk about a particular subject. Whatever it was, she couldn't bring herself to discuss it for days. Instead, she talked about the school she'd begun with the help of Miles, Elaney, Gary, and George, or the midwinter weddings for Miles and Coram, Alanna's doings. She met Alanna's friends in the tribe and tried her hand at weaving. Buri joined the girls, who shocked the elders by studying warrior arts. When she showed them Khmeri trick writing, she drew the young men, uniting the two groups in their eagerness to learn. "I'm glad we came," Thayet told Alanna a week after her arrival. They sat in front of Alanna's tent after the evening meal. From the central fire, they could hear Buri teaching her friends a rude song about city dwellers. "She misses the excitement of the road," the princess added. "She's a lot like you in a way." Alanna massaged her palms with a wry smile. "If that's so, she'll find other things to challenge her. She won't be able to help it." She paused, then decided to see what was up. "You aren't here because you wanted to give Buri a holiday, Thayet, and it's a long ride to say hello." The princess looked away. "Jonathan admires the Bazir. He let me read the history. He thinks the Khmer, the Doi, and the Bazir may have descended from one race, though the Bazir are more cousins than in the direct line." "Thayet." Alanna sighed. The other woman nodded her handkerchief. "He wanted me to know everything about you, and about it being over. He said I should have the story straight." Her voice was soft. "But I have to wonder, because you and he are so close still." Alanna took the handkerchief away from her friend before she could damage it. "We always were close, long before we were lovers. I imagine we'll always be close, but not in the same way. We're friends, and I'm his champion. But everyone seems to think when you come back..." "Everyone?" Alanna wanted to know. "I think someone doesn't think that at all, or he wouldn't spend so much time with you," Thayet whispered. "If I hadn't come to Tortle..." Alanna drew a design in the sand. "Nonsense! I wanted you to be safe. We all did. And I knew you'd make a better queen than I would." "What?" yelped the princess. "Jonathan needs someone who will treat him like a person, not just a king," Alanna explained. "I can't. I'm his vassal, for all I'm his friend. You were born and reared to be royalty. It doesn't frighten you. You won't let him turn into a prig. You won't let him be smug." She hesitated, then said, "I was hoping by now you'd like him." "But you're my friend," Thayet wailed. "I can't take your man." Alanna hugged her. "He isn't my man. He's yours. And if you love him and he loves you, I want you both to be happy. I'd prefer you were happy with each other." Thayet sniffed and wiped her eyes. "I probably look like a hag." Alanna grinned. "Don't fish for compliments. It isn't becoming." A watery chuckle was her answer. "I was so happy at not having to go through a marriage of state." "Well, that was before you met John. So, that's all right." Now that she didn't have to worry about upsetting her friend, Thayet wanted to hear about Jonathan when he was younger. When that subject was exhausted, she told Alanna of the changes she hoped to make in Tortle. Buri arrived. When Thayet stopped for breath, the Khmeri said, "Glad it's not me she's talking to for a change. People in love are boring." Thayet made a face at her companion. Much later, as she and Alanna lay in their bedrolls, Thayet whispered, "Alanna, is there someone for you?" Alanna blinked, suddenly watery-eyed. "I don't know." "He'd be very unconventional, I know." Thayet sighed. "Most men would panic if they thought of marrying a lady knight," Alanna finished. "Someone like that would bore me silly. I've been very lucky with men." She fingered the ember at her throat, wondering where George was. "Then you'll be lucky again." The next morning, Alanna was performing her Shang exercises when she heard a sentry's warning whistle. It was answered by two others, and then a whistle sounded to mean no danger. She picked up her sword, wanting to check anyway, when a woman behind her said, "It's me they're whistling about." Alanna spun and stepped back into a fighting stance. The wiry female, now in front of her, raised her hands to show they were empty. Her tightly curled hair was more gray than chestnut. Her eyes were pale in a tan, weathered face. On her gloves was the Shang globe, surmounted by a bristling cat. "The reflexes are all right," the wild cat said, her voice light and dry. "Do you expect an attack even now?" Alanna lowered her sword. "I've had an interesting year." "Huh." Liam's master examined her carefully. "So, you were his last pupil. He thought you could be one of us, for all you're too old." Alanna looked away, afraid she might cry. "Come up to the ridge with me. I'm just passing through. You can see me off." "You've come away just to pass through," Alanna said, her emotions under control again. She followed the wildcat up to a ridge that commanded a view of the southern road. The older woman stopped to stare across the desert, lines deepening at the corners of her eyes. "I want to tell you I'm sorry about Liam. I wish I could have prevented it." The wildcat waved her explanation away. You have to understand, Shang, Lady Knight. We all know we risk early death, and he guessed or suspected. He wrote me from Chorus the day before he was killed. If he got lucky, I was to forget it. If he didn't, I was to give you this." She put a folded and sealed parchment into Alanna's hands. Alanna saw the older woman's eyes brim with tears. The wildcat gave her a tiny smile. "I love him more than my own sons. It's good to know he used his death well." Opening the parchment with hands that shook, Alanna read, "Kitten, knowing you think it's your fault I got killed when I did. You're thinking if you hadn't dragged me away, forget it. Remember the Doi woman, Michi, saying I knew my fate? Years ago, a Doi told me I'd know when it was the Black God's time for me. I think this is it. If I'm wrong and I live, the wildcat will burn this letter anyway, so you won't find out that I wrote it. Don't blame yourself. When could you ever tell me what to do? I chose my life. I accept dragon rank, knowing no dragon has lived to be 40. As it is, I'm the oldest dragon in almost 100 years. The truth is, we never saw death the same, like some other things, so I didn't talk about it with you. All you think of death is ending. To me, it's how a person goes. Dying for important things, that's better than living safe. I often visited Tortle, though we never met there. The last 2 times, the first before I found you, and the second when we sailed into Port Kane, I felt a change. Like the land when spring is coming. Bazir talking to northerners, not fighting them. Commoners and nobles planning the future. Even you, my kitten, your great disguise. It's part of something new that centers around your Jonathan. If I can protect this beginning, I will have died a dragon. You should grow old and testier, and raise lions and lionesses with a man who loves all of you, even your gift and your independence and your stubbornness. Practice the kicks off your left side. I don't care if they tire you out more than the right side kicks. Remember to rub that balm I gave you into the scars on your hands." The wildcat had gone while she read. Glad to be alone, Alanna sat and wept, letting the dragon go at last. Fayette and Burry left a few days later. Alanna started to think that about her own trip north, before the roads turned bad with winter rain and snow. Since she was trying to weave a blanket for George's midwinter present, she decided to set out when it was done. She was working alone in her tent one afternoon when a shadow blocked the light on her work. George Cooper, cloak and riding boots covered with dust, entered the tent. Alanna put down her shuttle. She could feel her heart drumming, and it took an effort to say lightly, "I was Sort of hoping you'd come before this. He sat beside her, examining the cloth on the loom. I'd hoped to come before this too, he admitted. Truth to tellin', giving up the rogue and turning respectable, it takes getting used to. Some days I get out of bed not knowing who I am. Jonathan kept me busy, like I wrote to you. 2, the castle down an old pirate swoop had to be fixed up proper before I brought... He stopped. Jonathan's announced he's to marry Thayette, he said abruptly. The Bazir will have told you? It's one of the advantages to having a king who's also the voice. His face would be easier to read if his back wasn't to the light. Thayette said you gave your blessing. I did. She curled her hands around her elbows to hide their trembling. You're not sorry for it. Had you wanted, you'd be queen. I didn't want it. He reached out to toy with the ember stone. What do you want, Alanna? She caught his hand and met his eyes, smiling. I want to be yours, if you're still interested. His fingers tightened on hers. Why? She looked down. I love you. He made her look up at him. Enough to wed with me. Enough to give up Roman and settle down and be the lady of Pirate Swoop. She looked at him quizzically, and he blushed. Well, to roam with me along. Alanna nodded. George took a breath. Enough to bear our little ones. She blushed. I'd like to have you for myself for a year or 2. After that, we'll have all the children we want. Her voice cracked as she added, I'll be proud to. Rising, George pulled Alanna into his arms. So, I finally tamed myself a lioness, he whispered when they broke their kiss. Alanna laughed. I wouldn't call it tamed, laddie me love. The lady of Pirate Swoop shouldn't be tame. George grinned, particularly not when she's the king's champion to boot. That's all right then. He picked her up for another kiss. Then he finally put her down. He took her hand and drew her out of the tent. Come on, lioness. We can tell your tribe we're betrothed. Guys, we finished. We finally finished the book. I forgot how much I loved this book and how much it made me cry. Oh my god, I'm sure you could hear. We'll get to Faithful. I can't. So, just a couple of things. I didn't write down much this time. So, I've been trying to do this thing where I'm a little bit more organized, where I've been writing out, like, my opening and then writing notes as I'm going, but I stopped writing halfway through because some things happened while I was going. Anyway, one of the things that I do like about this, about these books is that Tamora is very, just very, very good at wrapping things up really nicely. Sometimes it feels a little bit rushed, sometimes it doesn't. This one I felt like went at a really good pace. I do feel like there could have been a couple more chapters. Like, some of the longer chapters could have been split up, you know. But that's neither here nor there. So, I love in the beginning when John is preparing for his ordeal to be king. That she's sitting there and both the chamber and the jewel were both like, hey, some stuff's going down. They're like, look alive, girl. Come on. I need you to focus. Come on. We got this. Alex is such a prig. Seriously. He's awful. He died the way he should have. And honestly, she gave him more chances than he deserved. Way more chances. Of course, Josane, the insane, her dying was, honestly, she was alive way too long anyway. George and Coram fighting together is very much like a full circle moment, I think, because Coram in the beginning did not like George at all, full stop, right? Was not a fan of George, thought that Alanna needed better friends, and that, you know, when her and George started to get more romantic, that she definitely deserved better. But I think that he really saw a difference. Like, he thought differently about George, in the way that after he was able to, like, observe them being together and how he treated her, which I love. And of course, you know, he's in love with Rispa, who is George's cousin. So there were a lot of full circle moments. Obviously, I love that John and Alanna decided that they were much better as friends. They did not go well together as a couple. There were some power dynamics that were just skewed between them, and Jonathan a lot of times took advantage of that. I don't think it was on purpose. I just think that that's what happened, right? Roger is creepy. He's been, like, obsessed with Alanna since she was literally a child. She's just about 30, I think, here, in her later 20s, heading towards 30. But he's been, like, obsessed with her since he met her, or since he first heard of her during the sweating sickness, right? Because that was the whole reason he came to Chorus, was because his first plan, which was to kill the royal family, did not work, and he wanted to find out why. He was like, this should have been foolproof. I don't get it. And then he meets this little red-haired thing that supposedly got help from her teacher and cured Jonathan of the sweating sickness, right? So he's been mad obsessed with her for like 10 years, 10 or 15 years now. Claus, of course, a coward, and I'm glad he's dead. He died the way he should have, as a coward. The fact that he just thought that George was just gonna let him, like, stand back and let other people fight his battles for him is wild to me. God, Alanna losing Tom. I have a sister. We are as close as we can be in age. We're 10 and a half months apart. I'm 10 and a half months older than her. So she's as close to me as we can get without being twins, right? In age. And I could not imagine losing my sister the way that Alanna lost her brother. Like, and that's, like, they literally shared everything, you know, from, they thought it was going to be from womb to tomb, and only one of them got to the tomb part of it. And it was just so sad, and I would not have been well after that. Alanna is a badass. The fact that she uses Weaver magic to tie up those soldiers. And of course, Burry, I love Burry. She was so torn between rescuing Thayet and helping everybody else. And Thayet was like, girl, we got this. And was like, go on, go do your thing. And she held her own. And you know what? We love a self-reliant queen. We do. The Duke was so arrogant when he was trying to pull the sword, and I love that for once that little part of Alanna that's always like, ugh, just stop, was the part that she listened to, because that part of her brain was like, I mean, if he wants the sword, let him have it, just let go. And she did, and it buried itself in his chest, and thank God, because he was awful. God, so many things happened. I think what it boils down to is I'm so glad that Roger is gone. He was terrible, and I hate him. And I love that George gave her the time she needed to grieve and to be just by herself with the Bazir in the desert, you know. He just gave her that time to herself. And then he showed up and he was like, okay, so I'm like in love with you and I've been in love with you forever. Will you please come be my lady? And she was like, yes, king, I do love you. And he was like, they're like making plans for the future. And I thoroughly love that. And I love that the later books touch on that. And it's so amazing. So I will say when Faithful was killed by Josane, I don't know if you could hear it. I'm sure you could. I was literally crying. And I've done that since I was a kid. I read the first book in this series when I was in junior high. And I read the last one, I think, when I was an adult finally and could buy it myself. And I remember sitting there the first time I read how he died and just broke down. And I do it every single time I read that part. And I know it's coming too. That's the worst part. Is I know it's coming and I cry like a child every single time. So I do apologize for that. And then at one point I had to stop because I have a kitten. His name is Fiero and I love him oh so much. But he stole my earbud case off of my desk and one of the earbuds popped out of it and he was chasing it around my room for a minute. So I don't know if you could hear the bell that was tinkling in the background, but that was him and I had to get it back, so I had to stop for a minute. We are done with this particular series. We are going to go on to a next one. I'm actually going to start it next Sunday, and whatever book we choose, I may start doing 2 chapters at a time, but I am probably going to have to do a coin toss. I'm not lying. Because I only have 4 votes on my poll that I posted, and 2 of them are for the Dane series, and 2 of them are for the Circle of Magic series. And so it's literally a 50-50 split. So I think the only responsible thing to do is a coin flip, so I may post a small video of me doing that. And then I'll post something about the first chapter that's coming. So just be on the lookout for that next week, hopefully. And we'll get started on a new one. I'm so proud of myself because I started this book in April and I finally finished it in less than a year. So super proud of myself. I am going to start designating Sundays as my reading days. I'm committing to that. I'm having other people make me committed to that. So unless something catastrophic happens or something comes up where it pulls me away from this is what I'll be doing. I'll be posting this on Sundays. So just be looking for that. Anyway, that is enough of that. We are an hour and 33 minutes in, and I think that's probably enough of you guys listening to me babble. So I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for being here. Tell your friends, tell your family, come subscribe. Please comment down below. It really, really helps me, and it makes me feel like I'm not just talking into a void. Anyway, you guys have a good one. See y'all later. Bye.